Welcome back to another episode of the Sad Dad Games podcast. You're watching an episode of Eric's Indie Corner. My name is Eric.
And I'm Shan.
Yeah, it's just the two of us today. Yeah, just Shan and I holding down the fort. For those of you who want a little peek behind the curtains, Tucker was here just a minute ago, but he had to go so that he could go and build his Pokemon Legos. So he's busy doing other things. No, it's okay. We these indie episodes, I like to have kind of like a cast of that varies a little bit. So it's fun to do some with just me and Shan or me and one other person. So
yeah. So to elaborate unnecessarily, Tucker has a job now, which he hasn't had in almost a full year, and Mega Constructs or Mega Blocks, whatever, are they Mega Constructs? Yeah.
I have no idea.
Yeah. So they have these pixelated Pokemon things that used to be $25 each, which is when I picked them up because I have a big boy salary, and they just went on sale for $12.50 each. And Tucker, with his big boy job, had to rush out to go buy them, and so he had to bail on us 2 minutes ago.
Yeah.
So he cannot record this second episode.
No, he's busy. And you know what? Understandably busy. A full excuse. He's got to go build Legos. Yeah.
Yeah. He has not had disposable income in a year. So it is very important for him to go waste as much of it as possible.
He's earned it. No, I was just at Target and I saw, because I was thinking about getting just the Charmander because Charmander was always my favorite starter Pokemon. And then I was always like, no, I'll get it another time. I'll get it sooner or later. And then I was at Target and I saw that they were all half off. And I just walked up to the shelf and I just grabbed all of them. I didn't even have a cart. I had to walk up to the front, with them stacked. I didn't even think about it. I just walked by and was like, oh, well, I have to get all those. And I just armfuls and one of each. And then I immediately texted Shannon. Tucker was like, these are on sale. I got all of them. So
yeah.
That's the story of why Tucker's not here right now. Yeah.
Yeah.
So anyways, today we're going to be talking about a super cool indie game that I'm very excited about that I just finished recently called Tales of Iron. Tales of Iron is a 2D combat-focused Metroidvania. And here's the sticking thing. A lot of people call it a Souls-like game, and I don't super agree with that. We'll get into that a little bit later, but it is technically classified as a Souls-like game, but I don't think that it is. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But it's developed by Oddbug Studios and came out September 17th, 2021. Other notable games from the studio are Tales of Iron 2, which actually just released, depending on when this airs, a few weeks ago, which is why I kind of got interested in this series. I saw a trailer for the second one and I was like, oh, I should check out the first one. I'd seen it a little bit before and decided that I was like, okay, well, I do want to try this game out. And what tipped it over the edge for me is because I had seen trailers for Tales of Iron before it came out a few years ago, and I had seen trailers here and there, but I was always a little lukewarm on it because anyone who's listened before knows that I am a little bit of an animation snob, and this game employs a lot of rigged animation rather than frame by frame animation, and it kind of I was like, I don't know, it rubbed me the wrong way a little bit, just that the animation style, I didn't immediately jump in. And then I actually really watched one of the trailers and I realized that the person narrating the trailer was Doug Cockle, who voices Geralt the Witcher in the Witcher 3 games. And then I was like, oh, I need to buy this game right now. Because it's narrated by the Witcher, and obviously I need to be a part of that. So for those of you who have played the Witcher games, you know that Doug Cockle has a great, I'm Geralt, I'm the Witcher. And he's always going, winds howling. And he's just got this great gravelly voice that I really love, and he narrates this game and the second game, and is the reason I bought this game. It was 100% so that I could have Doug Cockle's voice dance around in my ears. So we're going to break this game down a little bit into story, gameplay, and then visuals and sound. Story for this game is one of my favorite parts of this game, actually, because it's simple but deep. So it has a really nice character-driven narrative that runs through it that is not overly complex or convoluted or difficult to understand, but is interesting and engaging nonetheless. So you play as a rat named Reggie, and you are a young prince, the son of King Radis. King Radis has brought peace and prosperity to the land and is the king that sits in the Crimson Keep. He's the king of all the rats in that area of the land, and he's brought peace. Everyone loves, King Radis. And it comes a time where King Radis has grown, too old. It's time for him to pass his crown on to a successor. And so there is a trial held between Prince Reggie and your older brother, Prince Dennis, who is a much larger, more burly rat. And so the game starts off with this competition to see who will take up the crown. But as this competition goes underway, the Rat Kingdom is attacked by frogs who kill King Radis and ravage your kingdom. And once all of the blood and carnage, kind of fades, you wake up as Prince Reggie and see that your kingdom has been left in shambles. And so it is your job as Reggie to avenge the death of your father, rebuild the kingdom, and purge the frog pond scum from your land. And so it's this mix of kind of like story, like fairy tale cutesiness with this grounded, gritty, like tale of kings and quests and magical lands. And it has this like really grounded kind of medieval setting that I really, really enjoyed. And it's dark and gritty and a lot of fun kind of going through the story and filling the shoes of Reggie and being a little rat in a large world and trying to rebuild your kingdom. When I say that the story was simple, it's because the setup is not super complex. It's all about rebuilding your kingdom, but it's engaging because of the characters. As you go through, you play as Reggie, you meet lots of different characters as you rebuild your kingdom, and you build and forge bonds with some of the existing characters in your kingdom. But it really feels like this world has been is in a war, that it's been attacked, and you have to like drive these forces from your land. But it's also got this slight adorable air to it because you're a cute little rat and they're like your main enemies are these big scary frogs. And so it's this weird mix of like gritty conquest and violence with cutesy little woodland creatures. All right, so gameplay for this game, this is the point where I have a little bit of a sticking point. Gameplay for this game is very combat focused. It's described a lot as a Souls-like game, but I don't think that it is. Remind me, Shan, have you played many Souls-like games? Yes, no?
I've played the first 30 minutes of many Souls-like games.
Well, you played through Hollow Knight, though, right? You love we both love Hollow Knight, and I would classify Hollow Knight as a Souls-like game.
And I have been playing Black Myth Wukong. I've since been distracted with something I'm doing in my personal life, but I have gotten through the first 2 chapters of Black Myth Wukong, and I was all excited because I was thinking, is this my first Souls-like? Have I finally figured it out? And then I have been corrected by the internet that is a hack and slash, and I think it's a Souls-like. So it's a little of this, a little of that, but it's probably more of a hack and slash.
Well, there's some. I haven't played Black Myth Wukong, but there's probably a lot like hodgepodge of ideas, and I've heard plenty of people be classified as a Souls-like. So you do you, man. Run your own race. Yeah,
I think it's got Souls-like elements to it. So I'm taking my first win on that. Yeah.
See, and I'm not by any means a Souls-like aficionado. One of my favorite games of all time is Hollow Knight, which I feel like has a lot of Souls-like influences, but varies a lot in some important ways. I've beaten Dark Souls 1 and Dark Souls 3, and that's kind of it. So I have dabbled, but I'm not versed. I'm terrified of Elden Ring. Like I know that it's so big and it will take so many hours and it will be so hard that I just don't know if I've got it in me. Because the way that I play a Souls-like game, the way I played Dark Souls 1 and 3 is I would go at it hard for like 2 weeks. And then I'd be emotionally exhausted and I'd have to like take a break. And then I'd come back like 6 months later. And then I'd go at it hard again for like 2 more weeks. And then I'd take a break. And so I had to do it in chunks because they can be very frustrating if you're really struggling against a particular spot. And it's for me personally, it's really taxing to be butting your head up against the same enemy or the same boss over and over and over again for a long time. So I really enjoy the success feedback of a Souls-like game, but they can sometimes beat me down just a little too much.
Yeah. Here's what I hear when somebody says that they love Souls-like games. I don't have a life. I maybe I have a family, but I neglect them. Yeah.
It's the modern day World of Warcraft thing, where it's the new World of Warcraft is the old Souls-like. You neglect your family. It doesn't matter. Just you got to get online and play your game.
Right. I cool. You go hard at games, but I don't want to grind on a game. I don't want my 30 to 60 minutes that I get in a day to myself, maybe once every 3 days, to be spent losing at a boss and then trying to learn how to play it again 3 days later. I don't have that luxury. And so for you to tell me I have to get good and that I'm just not a good enough gamer and this game is gated to the elite players, you just sound like an asshole, okay? I have a life, I'm a dad, and I have 2 jobs. So give me a moderate difficulty so that I can enjoy this amazing game. You sound like assholes.
Are you ready for some good news, Shan, that you're going to like? Tales of Iron has difficulty settings. So there is a
I love this game.
Right? So it is the normal mode is incredibly challenging, but not impossible to overcome. And I'll be honest, I played through this game quickly because I wanted to get to the second game. I wanted to so that I could do this video, do a review, and so I did play through quickly. So full disclosure, I played through on Fairy Tale mode, and I didn't experience a lot of friction. There was a couple bosses that I died to a few times, so because I had to learn their patterns. Mm-hmm. I did play the second game. I did play the second game on normal difficulty, so I feel like I've got a good taste of the difficulty level of Tales of Iron. So I'm not a scrub. I can play hard games, but I do really love that they gave the option that there's 3 difficulty settings. There's the normal difficulty setting, which is quite challenging, and then there's the Fairy Tale mode, which has some moments, but is pretty, not a huge friction-filled experience. And then I didn't even touch the super hard mode. It's called Bloody Whiskers or something like that. And I was like, nope, no thank you. I don't need that. I'm good. But it's quite a challenging game. I did play through the first about hour on the harder difficulty because I wanted to see what it was like, even though I knew that I was going to start it over and play it on the easier one because I wanted to play it through it more quickly, just for the same reasons that Shan said, because I had limited time. And so that's one argument that I feel makes it very different from a Souls-like game, is the variable difficulty. Another argument that I think is in a Souls-like game, it's all about managing your stamina, because you have a stamina meter, your attacks do stamina, blocking takes stamina, and in Tales of Iron, it's not there is no stamina meter. Rather than, when you get hit on your shield, it takes some stamina. When you swing your sword, it takes some stamina. Rather than doing that, there's a system where when an enemy attacks a certain way, you want to block it. And when they attack a certain way, you want to parry it. When they attack a certain way, you want to dodge it. And so rather than you being able to kind of approach combat with whatever tools and however, but you have to watch your stamina, Tales of Iron combat feels a little bit more like a puzzle, but like a fast-paced puzzle where you have to read the enemy and understand the attack that's incoming and then how you should deal with that attack. And so it's very different from a Souls-like game in that way as well.
Yeah, parry and dodge, patience-based combat games are the most difficult games for me to play because I am more of a brute force type player where I just mash buttons until I get through. And obviously that makes me sound terrible as a player, but I'm just
sometimes that's what you want. Yeah. I'm the same way sometimes. Yeah.
Sometimes I just want to be on rails, and very few games I feel like have merited my attention, where the gameplay loop is fascinating enough that I want to engage with it, to the way it wants me to, and that's like Hollow Knight and Returnal, and like and now I guess kind of like Black Myth Wukong, but like those first two games I mentioned were like, this game is hard, but it deserves my attention because they're so amazing that I want to learn how to be better to beat it. And at that time, I had a little more luxury of time to engage with it at that level. But these games where it's like you have to learn how to be patient and then to dodge then attack, or be patient then parry then attack. I just really struggle with those because it's like, no, I want to go in, I want to stab them in the eye. And so Ghosts
Where's
of
the giant
Tsushima-
glowing eyeball? Yeah.
yeah, Ghost of Tsushima, like I wanted to rip my hair
I
out.
loved the combat in Ghost of Tsushima. I
Yeah,
loved it.
But like it didn't click for me until like 50% of the way through the game. I hated the combat in that game until because I didn't understand the combat until halfway through.
Yeah, I
until
played
I
that game
understood it
for
was
like
a parry game.
I played that game for like 10 minutes and I was like, "Oh, I love this." Like
I hadn't
this
played a
is
game
my
that was so
jam.
I hadn't played a game that was so like patience based until that point. So I
Yeah.
I just didn't know. And you probably
does have
played a
its-
game like that before.
Yeah, it has a pretty and even for games that are like very parry and like waiting, like Shan was talking about, Ghost of Tsushima is still kind of its own beast. It has a very specific cadence to its combat that it doesn't share with a lot of other games. But yeah, so Tales of Iron, another argument for not being quite like a Souls-like. Also, Souls-like games are very famous for you get to your save point and it refills your health flask or whatever. For Souls-like games, it's an Estus flask. And then all of the enemies come back. That doesn't happen in this game either. You drink bug juice. You have a bug juice flask. And you have to find little containers with bug juice or kill bugs and take their juice. And that's how you replenish your flask. And so when it's described as a Souls-like game, I feel like it's just a really simple blanket because it's a combat-focused game with difficult boss battles. And so it's really easy to like, oh, it's a Souls-like game. And I feel like that oversimplifies it a little bit and sells it short of what it actually is. It's a combat-focused Metroidvania is kind of how it feels to me. So you play in a 2D perspective, lots of difficult boss battles. It has a big... it's not one large interconnected map, but there's like I think 4 or 5 different areas that are like their own little map that you can travel to from your hub area. So it's not like one large Metroidvania thing in that sense, but you do get items that advance your progression and keys that unlock new paths and areas of maps. And so it has a very Metroidvania style of progression in that way. And also lots of gear to find. You can get helmets and body armor and different weapons and shields. And so it's very much like it feeds into that loop of if you like collecting loot and gear, this game will really kind of strike a chord with you because it's always exciting defeating a boss and being like, oh, maybe they'll give me a cool sword, or finding a treasure chest, or you get to a secret area and you're like, oh, I didn't know this. It's like a secret room and you're like, what treasures are in here? So it tickles that part of like that part of my brain that loves Skyrim. That's like, I wonder what secrets are in here, if there's going to be any good gear in here. So it's very fun to run around and collect gear. There's also some light side missions. Oh, sorry.
I've always found like RPG and looting very tedious. Like that actually disengages me from games. But
it depends on because I think it can be overdone. I think Tales of Iron strikes a good chord because Skyrim, like for example, with games like Skyrim, you've got like a million items in your inventory and you're not sure what's important. And like, if I throw away this cheese wheel, is it going to lock me out of a quest 20 hours from now? Like, and so it's lots of, there's too much inventory maybe. And I mean, I do still really like Skyrim, but that's an example of that.
Yeah. Like how often is it pulling me into the inventory for inventory management, and how much do I have to engage with the descriptions and the and their qualities to find out which is better than the others, so that I can discard them. And like, that's so much tedium that it's like you're pulling me out of the primary gameplay loop for way too long.
So I will say that for Tales of Iron, the stuff that you get is mostly just like weapons and armor, and it's all pretty it's all pretty well laid out, where it's the stats are really clear, where it's like there's this piece of armor versus the one that you're wearing, and it's like defense and attack, and there's not a lot of like extra tertiary stats like good against lightning, or like this has 10% fire defense, or it's like the stats are fairly simple. So there are some RPG elements, but they're not overly complex, which I kind of appreciated. Sometimes it's nice to have a game that's just, it's not super complex, but it does have some systems where you can customize and get different armor. And if you're having a hard time with a boss, you're like, well, maybe I need a better helmet or whatever, or like I'm not using the right sword. So I'd say that the inventory management is fairly minimal in this. It's not going to pull you out of the experience a ton. And usually, like when you're getting an item, you get a little pop-up screen that will show you right there in that screen if it's better than what you already have equipped or not. So you can decide right that, like while you're picking it up, if you want to go in your inventory menu or if you just want to leave it there. So
is it an instant discard, or do you have to like downgrade it and then like recycle it, and it's a whole secondary loop?
I don't think. What do you mean by downgrade and recycle?
Like can you recycle your unused goods so that you can scrap them and turn them into other things?
So there's not enough gear in the first game, so you can't sell any of your gear. But that's because the amount of gear that you get is not enough. So like you can't scrap it and get rid of it so it's just the gear that you get is there. And then when you get better gear, you can equip that, but for example, I think that like it's like a 4x4 square for each type of armor. And so like for your chest armor, for your head armor, and then by the time I finished the game, each of those was full, but that was like all the armor I had. So I didn't have like dozens and dozens of items. It was like 12-ish of each. So
you're just upgrading done. Okay.
Yeah, so there's not tons of different armor and stuff. And it's not really like a super long game either. So it's a game that didn't wear out its welcome with, you're grinding for new equipment and you're getting gear and like you have to upgrade it with these different items and things like that. It's mostly just like you find this armor and these are the stats and you can equip it. Like it's about better. As complex as it gets. Yeah. So the second game, we can talk about that later, but it does add some extra wrinkles there that make it a little more complex, but still quite manageable. So this game is not a super deep RPG, which I kind of liked. I felt like it suited the game style pretty well. So now we get to talk about my favorite part of the game, visuals and sound. The visuals in this game are an absolute delight. I don't know why I didn't give this game a chance sooner, because the visuals are so striking. They use this kind of like storybook painterly style with really harsh, thick black outlines for things that makes them almost look like a wood print, like a stencil. Like everything's kind of carved out of wood and inks. I don't know exactly how to describe it, but it's got this like gritty, rough, but still beautiful kind of a aesthetic to it, and I really, really like it. They also do a really amazing job of using layers. So it's like a 2D game, but they'll have like the layer that that the character is standing on, and then they have several layers in front of that. And then like I counted one time, and it was like almost 30 layers of different art assets that just going off into the distance to create this incredible sense of depth. So as you're moving, there's all this really excellent parallax scrolling of dozens of elements all at once that creates this really deep field of view and really interesting art style. And it makes you, since you're playing as a rat, it makes you feel small, and it makes the world feel grand and big and interesting. And so I can't get enough of this art style. I, again, don't know why I didn't play it sooner, because as soon as I started playing, I was immediately in love with the art style for this game. I think it's spectacular.
What I think is fascinating about these layers is that not all layers are done equally. Like, it seems like clearly, like there's like a layer that's done with gradients that kind of acts as volumetrics to add this fog layer, and like they use very interesting colors to kind of fill in the world that don't even necessarily match the lighting effects of the world, but add this like stylistic, very deliberate,
like a fairy tale.
scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like
it's
a dark fairy
tale.
Yeah.
That's a
it makes everything feel like a dark fairy tale. But yeah, they use these really interesting colors, lots of incredible depth,
fantasy
really great
color
lighting.
enhanced palette.
Yes, exactly that. And it's just always really nice to look at. And it
Everything
also
looks
kind
like
of,
it's lifted out of a storybook.
it does. It's got very beautiful storybook kind of visuals, which makes the incredible violence all the more shocking when it happens. I mean, when I was playing this game, I was genuinely surprised that it was rated teen, because it's very gruesome. There's decapitations, lots of blood splatter, multiple enemies where you stab them and their guts fall out. Like, lots of really fairly gruesome, violent things. And one of the things that I love about the art style, little detail, is when you're fighting enemies, the blood will splatter out of them and it'll splatter on Reggie and on his sword. And then for the next little while as you're playing the game, he's got like blood splattered on his face, and it just makes everything feel really gritty and gruesome, and like he's, out on this bloody quest and in a war with these frogs.
That reminds me of like games where you get in the water and they have like they have a design where like the character is drenched in water, and like, oh, that's cool that they actually designed that out. And then you never notice at what point they remove the wetness of the character.
You're like, when did the wet stop? Yeah.
When did the wet stop? Why is their hair not wet anymore? It's like, did I go through a door or something and then they removed it? It's like, I'm guessing it's like that with the blood. It's like,
yep.
When did the blood disappear? And
you always tell yourself, you're like, I'm going to watch, and this time I'm going to see it. And then you never do. You always forget. Yeah. But yeah, so it's like that blood splatter, and then it disappears sometime. I don't know when. Maybe, who knows? You're fighting things so often that maybe he's just bloody for the whole game. I don't know.
Don't the orcs in the Lord of the Rings, don't they like lick the sword?
Yeah. Ooh, gross.
Yeah, it's probably like
kind of
that.
like that. Well, and here's another thing that will probably help get you invested, is the frogs that you fight have a very orcish vibe to them. They
Orc
all
or
kind
Uruk-hai? Probably orc.
Yeah, probably kind of orcish, because they're like big green monsters, but they have like they feel very like tribalistic and like kind of rough, deformed, and and there's some of like big bloated monsters kind of a thing, but so they're very cool, kind of. They do a good job of making them look like monsters, but they're frogs. So yeah, I love the art style in this game, and I referenced it a little bit earlier. The animation in this game isn't perfect. It gets the job done and is mostly very nice. There are a few janky animations here and there because they do use a rigged animation style. It can't be quite as fluid or as interesting as frame by frame might have been. But I think it was a necessary sacrifice because you get so much gear and armor that equips to your character model, that you want to be able to see like the gear that you're wearing and the armor that you're wearing. And so the rigged animation style was a necessity for that. And it works very well most of the time. It gives everything kind of a marionette puppet sort of look that works most of the time, and every once in a while is a little janky, but doesn't really do anything to detract from the overall visual presentation, in my opinion. Still very, very nice, top-notch stuff. All right, and then talking about visual or music and sound, the soundtrack is and I haven't pronounced this name ahead of time. I should have practiced before I started recording, but the soundtrack is composed by Francesco Ameglio. And it's lovely. It's great. It's full of like lutes and horns, and it feels very medieval. And one of the things that I thought was really cool about the soundtrack is it's very rarely present. Most of the time there isn't music. It's ambient sounds and the clash of your sword and the splatter of blood. And it really lets that sound design shine through because the music is so infrequent. And one of the things that I loved about the music is that when it's there, it's usually because it's being played by real world characters in the game. Very rarely is there music that isn't attached to like characters. So when you go back to like your castle keep, there will be like bards there playing music. and that's the music that you're hearing. If there's an intense boss battle with a giant monster frog, there's like frogs in the background that are playing intense percussive music to accent the boss battle, but it's like the music is always accompanied by an in-game band that's playing the music that you're hearing, and it kind of grounds the music and makes it feel it's just not something that I've seen in a game before, where they're like, we can only have music if there's actual music being played by characters in the game. I thought that was fun.
I want to point out that the name is Francesco Amelio. It's
Amelio.
Italian.
Yeah, of course. So I am the worst at pronouncing names in the world. You will never find a person more terrible at it than I am. So my apologies, Francesco.
It's a unique. It's the GL sound. It's a unique Italian sound that you'll never pronounce.
Well, I know, but this is not my first transgression. Every single time I reference people like with names that I'm unfamiliar with, I butcher them always. So just know that I think you're incredible, and I'm just bad at names. It's not a personal thing. So yeah, I don't have enough nice things to say about the sound design in this game either. I think the music is great. I think the sound design and the clash of swords, the splatter of blood, it's all very effective sound design that makes you feel great. I think that especially the sound that you make when you parry with your shield is nice and crunchy. It's very satisfying. You like get hit by attack, it pauses for a second, plays this nice crunch sound, and then you kind of throw your enemy back with the shield, and then you can go and attack them. So it's got this really nice weight, good sound design there. And of course, as previously mentioned, the whole game is narrated by Doug Cockle, and I could listen to him read literally anything. I can't get enough of his narrating. It fits perfectly. It feels grounded in this like medieval world. His raspy delivery of the lines is just the right amount of dark and gritty and but still kind of feels like a fairy tale. So I love it. And then I have a fun fact before we get to the stats at the end of the game. So the game is actually dedicated to the pet rats of the dev team. So many of the rats that are featured in the game are counterparts for real world rats who share their likenesses and names. So the main character Reggie that you play as and was one of the main developers' pet rats, and the bard and lots of other rats in the game were, based on pet rats of the dev team. So I thought that was sweet. There's a little page in the pause menu where you can pause, and it'll show you like a nice artwork of all of the pet rats who, it says in loving memory of, because rats only live for like 3 or 4 years. So they probably most of them passed during development, but
I don't understand how so many people had so many pet rats.
Maybe they all met at a rat convention, and they were like, "You've got a rat? Me too. Let's make a game." Like,
I'm guessing that they all went out and got pet rats because they were making the game.
I mean, maybe. I didn't do any more research outside of what I just told you.
It's way too much of a coincidence.
Yeah. There was like 8 or 9 of them. So that's what they did. They were like, let's make a game about rats, and let's go buy rats so that we can make the game about our rats.
You want to know a horrific story? I've had a couple encounters with rats. Like, I was like in psychology in college, and so like there was like one thing that I did where I did some rat lab tests, and I was helping do some training on them and feeding them. So I did that. That was nothing. I had rats, like some mice as a kid, and I didn't understand that mama rats will eat their young if you don't feed them properly and you watch them. And so there was a day where I woke up to find a bunch of clumps of tissue and blood of like 5 baby mice, because this mama had like 9 mice, and then I found like 4 or 5 of them dead, or maybe like the next day I found 2 more dead. And so I just like, as a kid, was traumatized by finding my mice and my mama mouse having eaten her young, and thinking that was my fault, but then realizing that mice are a violent breed. And so like I took the rest of them out to a field, and I thought that the police were going to find me abandoning my pets.
Hello, did you abandon these mice? Yep, come with me to jail, please. Yeah.
I took them out to like the West Jordan dump area out by like the highway.
You'll be happy here. Yeah.
I was like, you're much better off here. It's smelly, it's gross, there's garbage.
You'll love it. Yeah.
You won't eat your young.
Yeah, I never had mice or rats, but I had hamsters as a kid. And there are certain kinds of hamsters. My sister got two. They were called teddy bear hamsters. And I don't know if you knew this, but teddy bear hamsters are extremely territorial, even with their own siblings, which you might not have thought would be a thing. So she bought two siblings, kept them in the same cage, and was like, yeah, they'll be best friends. And then one day, I don't remember their names, but they were these two hamsters, and they were just trying to kill each other. And I don't know if you've ever watched hamsters fight, but it is simultaneously very upsetting and super hilarious, because they're just these stupid little fur balls, and they were like on opposite sides of the cage, and they were just staring at each other, and then they would like leap at each other, and they'd like, and then they'd separate. And then they'd go back to staring at each other, and then they'd separate. And it was just like, and my sister was just like screaming from the room, like, Mom, Dad! And the hamster, and we like all ran in, and we just like watching them try to kill each other. And I was like, I don't know what to do. And so I don't remember if it was my mom or my dad, but they like ran out and they got the thick leather gloves that we used to use to like weed our gardens, and they like grabbed the hamsters and pulled them apart. And then they went to the pet store and they bought 2 cages and put them far away from each other. But both of the hamsters survived, despite their best efforts, because they were trying to kill each other.
Oh, I hope the sound was incredible.
It was just lots of squeaks and squeak. It was very weird. I hope that everyone at some point in their life can see a hamster fighting for its life, because they put it all out on the table. They were both full tilt. They were going for it.
Yeah, don't do it purposefully. That's like,
no, don't do it on purpose.
Like,
don't. Yeah. I never mind. But if it happens and you happen to watch it, it's something. Yeah.
Pull out your phone for a second, record it, never share it on YouTube. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, it's a good way to get
for yourself.
Get canceled. Yeah, just watch it on your own. Watch it on your own time. Keep it for you. Yeah. No, but so that was never had rats, but that was my rodent keeping experience.
Yeah. We've all had violent rodent keeping experiences.
Apparently. Mine was not nearly as harrowing as Shan's. Neither of them had babies and then tried to eat them.
They were so small. They were like less than a week old, man. They were still in their like little pinky phases. Is that what they're called?
Yeah, sure. I don't know. When they're little pinky
mice? Yeah, they're
pinky mice.
Pinky mice.
Sure.
So, horrifying to see those dead.
I can imagine. So the rats that this game were based on, obviously not around anymore because rats don't live that long, but they always have a nice loving memory immortalized forever in the tales of Reggie and his comrades. So, but yeah, I love this game. I think it's a great time. I really, really enjoyed it. The visceral combat combined with the striking art style really clicked for me. So big fan. Playtime, you'll get about 8 to 12 hours out of this game. It also, you can get another few hours. The version that I bought was like the deluxe version. It came with a DLC pack, which was like some extra armor and then some more bosses to fight, as well as a whole new area called Bright Fir Forest, where you get to go hang out with a bunch of squirrels and help them out. So fun stuff there. Good DLC. It's available for Windows, Mac OS, Linux, Nintendo Switch, PS4, PS5, Xbox One, and Xbox Series. So you can get it pretty much anywhere, anywhere you want to buy games. And it retails for $24.99, and that includes the deluxe stuff with the extra DLC missions and everything. And it's a great time. Check it out. Super cool game. Solid recommend. I really enjoyed it. All right, everybody, that is going to do it for us. This has been another episode of Eric's Indie Corner. Thank you for listening. I love talking about indie games. I really like having an excuse to get online and talk about indie games and hopefully convince at least one person to try a game that I love. So be sure to listen on Mondays to catch our regular series, and listen on Thursdays for episodes of Eric's Indie Corner. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. If you like what we're doing, leave us a comment, subscribe. We would love to hear from you. And that'll do it for today. We'll see you guys next time. Bye, y'all.
Bye.
Outro. Bleep-a-doof, bleep-a-deep, bloop-a-dee-blow.